Welcome to Goretober, Week 1. In this video, we're going to be going over my prompt list. Well, not my prompt list, but the prompt list I've been using for this year's Goretober. And together, we are going to be going through each of the days and kind of going over my process on each of these prompts. And just kind of have a little bit of a chat, have a little time going through these. This is my first time doing a video like this, and so I hope it ends up being good. Now before we get into the meat of the video, yes, you are on the right YouTube account. I have changed my branding once more. Not on here, everywhere else. Mainly because of the contest that I entered in. I'll be changing the name on the channel to the rebrand name, which is Quill Tulip. Once that contest is over, because that just makes it easier on the people hosting the contest, honestly. I also only have made 2 sprites so far for Dark Sprites, so these will be updated in the future, and hopefully will look a lot better at the end of it. But to really get into the meat of everything, I really wanted to do something different this year with Goretober, because the last couple of years I haven't exactly been able to finish my prompt list. I think I've made it the longest to day 10, I think was the longest that I had managed to go. And that's when I was doing everything traditionally, because I didn't have time during school to do a lot of digital art at the time. So this is kind of my motivation to actually get the prompt list done. So without further ado, let's get into those prompts. The prompt list I am using is Ongoing Crisis on Instagram's prompt list for this year. I'll be posting a video every week going over each week of the prompts. So let's get on into it. So with day 1 being teeth, I wanted to go for a more, not quite like zombie style, but a more like monstrous type of thing. Very like classic old school horror. A lot of the thought behind this was just mouth ripping open with lots of teeth. This one actually wasn't my first prompt. My first prompt was nosebleed on a different prompt list, but I could not, for the life of me, figure out how to do nosebleed and how to make it work, and this will be very important later. So I ended up changing to this prompt list, and ended up having a much better time with my day 1 prompt. Really got into the horror spirit of it all. I had a lot of fun making it work and doing all the teeth, and this is really only the time I, with my cartoony style, do pretty realistic teeth, and like have like the sections of the teeth laid out, because otherwise I don't like doing it. It doesn't look quite right on my style, but when I'm doing something with horror, I like doing it. This is also the only time I have done shading the way that I did in this prompt the entire week. None of the others got shaded in the way that this one did. But I really like how the shading turned out on this. It feels very American Werewolf in London kind of styling. So, because of this not being technically the first prompt, but the first prompt on the list, I'm really happy with how it turned out, because I couldn't figure out the other one. But I really love how this turned out. The shading on this is just so perfect. I love how the shading looks on this, because you can't really tell. You can't really tell what's going on, but you can see the glow of the teeth. You can see it just being reflected, the monstrosity of it, and I love it so much. Now, day 2 is Candy Ghoul, and I have an interesting history with Candy Ghoul. I've never been able to get it right. Last year, I did a Goretober, which was 2 years ago. I basically did the same thing that I did here, and I covered the candy in too much blood and did not emphasize the candy aspect as much as I should have. But regardless of that, I think this was, definitely learning a little bit more from my mistakes of last time. I tried to do a candy heart kind of motif with candy spilling out of him, like kind of like a piñata. But actually, that would have been an amazing prompt. Maybe I'll do that next time where it's very much like a piñata. But I ended up having to download a candy brush, and it didn't really match the style of this. As you'll be able to see in a moment, because of the fact that the brush I ended up using doesn't have lines. So I think that because of the fact that it didn't have lines, really kind of didn't make it fit, the rest of the style, which is unfortunate, but nothing I could have really done about that besides, you know, figure out a way to draw candy efficiently and maybe make it my own brush for future Candy Ghoul prompts. But I definitely think I did a lot better than I have done in previous years, especially trying to use less realistic color for the blood and kind of make it look like a jelly almost. It didn't turn out to look like jelly, but I tried. It's definitely not one of my favorites, but I think I definitely learned a lot either way on how to do it the next time I have a prompt like this. But because of the fact that it wasn't entirely what I was hoping to achieve, it kind of makes it on the lower half of the prompt lists that so far. Definitely not one of my favorites of this week. Ah, the cursed prompt of the nosebleed. I could not escape it even by switching prompt lists. I had no idea what to do with this one. I struggled pretty hard with, figuring out how I could make it feel like part of Goretober. For me at least, it's very difficult to make, a prompt like this feel very horrific and gory. But I definitely think that with what I had done was probably the best I could have done with the time that I had in a single day. I think that if I had maybe planned it out a little more, and had that kind of time to plan it out fully, I could have done a lot better with this sort of prompt. And I would have thought that having a couple extra days instead of just doing it on the first day was going to be giving me plenty of time to figure out how I could make it gory, but you live and you learn. I do like what I did with the shading to an extent. I wish I had done the lighting a little bit better, and rendered it a little bit more, because it does feel very desaturated compared to the other one, since I did a very red light type deal in the other prompts. if I had to pick a favorite of the prompts so far, this would not be it. I'm not necessarily disappointed in how I handled it, but it's not my favorite on the ones that I have handled so far. I feel like if I had more time to really get a feel for this prompt, I would have done a lot better. But with what it is, I'm pretty happy with it. I definitely think if I was given more time, I could have made it a little bit better. Mutation. This one was my all-time favorite of the prompts so far. I really loved what I ended up doing, and you can kind of see how I tried to do a more like two-headed, split-off head kind of look, but I couldn't make it work. So I ended up going with a more horn mutation, radiation mutation, skin peeling off type thing. And in doing it the way that I did, I kind of made it a little extreme to the point where it was even making me a little bit uncomfortable working on it in close-up shots. But that does happen sometimes with my own gore. I did a Parasite prompt redraw a couple months ago, and that made my stomach queasy working on that one. But man, this was a fun prompt. I vastly enjoyed working on it. Getting all the detail in and getting to just kind of go all out. And that's my favorite part about Goretober, is that I just kind of get to go kind of wild with it. I get to like explore the darker side of my art in the horror realm, and I don't really have any consequences to doing so. It's definitely my favorite piece. I'm really happy with how it turned out. I love what I did with the lighting. It feels like old school horror almost. Now I might be a bit biased, but I adore this one. I do kind of like how one of the horns almost looks like a tongue. Kind of crawling in on his face. I kind of like that. It looks very much like something you'd see in a painting in a horror game. Which is so cool. I definitely went with some pretty big game inspirations with this one. Day 5 was Autopsy, and I didn't quite know what to do with this one. I tried a few different things, with trying to have gold be the subject of the autopsy, but then I kind of switched it up and went for a more like old school kind of drawing that I would use to do with gold a lot, where he very much was enjoying the terror that he was causing on others, specifically the terror he was causing on Moon, which you actually get a little bit of a cameo of him in this one. I very much enjoy the posing and framing of this one. I feel like I accidentally made his head a little too big, but by the time I really noticed that, it was a bit too late to fix it. I do wish that I had done a little differently, with at least the lighting, and maybe change it to a scalpel instead of a knife. I feel like it would have gone the prompt of the autopsy aspect a little bit more. But you'll be able to see what I mean about the shading, especially with like the amount of blood that I did do. It kind of like makes it very hard to see the actual like gore aspects very clearly. It kind of makes it a little bit muddled, which you would think would work in a very horror type setting, but I feel like it actually downplays the drawing itself. Again, with the shading, despite me loving how the piece looks, I feel like the shading kind of boggles it down to making it very dark and hard to tell what's going on, which I feel like it kind of impacts how you see the drawing. I still like how it turned out. I very much do like how it turned out. I just wish I had changed up how the shading looks and maybe how the blood looks to make it a little bit more clear as to what's going on. Day 6 was eyes, and this is another one I'm not too happy with how I ended up doing the prompt. Now that it's been a day after, I've kind of had a different idea of how I could have done this one. I'm still happy with how I did it, mostly with the pose of the drawing. I wish I had done it a little bit more force perspective wise, but I still think it turned out well. I don't think the execution of the eyes is my best work. I like the actual like eyes more than I do the attempted carved in eyes. And that could just be how I did the shading and the work on the blood itself. I think I might have actually overdone it when it comes to the gore aspect of this piece. And I feel like that might have affected it a little bit on being able to tell what the cut in eyes was supposed to look like. Unfortunately, that does happen sometimes. But I wasn't really, it was really hard to get into this piece. I kept getting distracted throughout my time working on it, unfortunately. So it didn't leave me with as much time to fully like absorb what I was working on at the time, and sometimes that'll happen. But regardless, I do really like how I made it look at the end of the day. I wish I had executed the prompt a little bit better, but for what it is, I'm really happy with it. I think that if I had approached it with more so something like eye damage of some kind, I feel like it would have conveyed the prompt a little bit more, but it definitely adds to the kind of eerie element of a very horrific prompt like eyes could be. I think if I had done something with like eye trauma, it could have been a little bit better on the gore aspect, but I still like how it turned out at the end of the day. And there we have it. This was very much a fun project. I'm really happy with how this turned out. If I had a little bit more time in the day to work on these, I feel like at least for 3 of the 6, I could have done a better job. With the time that I was given, I'm pretty happy with how I've gone so far, and I definitely think that this will be, I'll be able to take this and kind of learn from it for the rest of the prompts of this month. But yeah, there are our final 6 images. Thank you all so much for joining us on this video. I'll definitely be posting more videos like this, I think, in the future. It's definitely a lot of fun to show you guys in a more in-depth way kind of how my brain works when I have prompts and stuff, and just in art in general.